The dishonorable player. Please bear with this one. I do have to set the scene up first. But this was an incident that shook me when it happened. I was so cross, and it soured out my relationship with a player that I considered a friend. So a while ago, about 5 years or so, I got back into RPGs after a long gap. I was lucky in that I linked up with some other players looking to build a Wild Marches server. I became a founding member. It was an eclectic group, but one guy, let's call him Mike, set himself up as a bit of a leader and font of 5e knowledge. 5e was still new to me, and there were others in the group who hadn't played before, so we listened to him. Plus, he sounded like a nice guy, and I got on well with him. Or so I thought. This is slightly irrelevant, but he was quite young. I was a lot older than the other players, and I was more experienced in RPGs than him. But not this version. Also, I played a lot of non-D&D games, but I never brought this up. Anyway, I started playing a new concept, a Hexblade, as I was a huge Elric fan, who was multi-classed into Bard. So I will admit, it was tricky for some people to guess his class. That's important for later. And Mike also built a Warlock, but this was a Fiend Fightlock. That is, his first level was Fighter, and the rest Warlock. Now, as we were both Blade Locks, we had a lot in common. My character was linked to the patron in his blade through his backstory and was built around love. Whereas Mike's character was possessed by a literal demon. That's right, a demon was inside of him. This was an interesting concept, and he played with much gusto the trapped man locked in a battle for his soul. Sometimes, however, the demon would win, and that's when the problems will start. I will get to that. The other thing to mention is that Mike's character had a code. That was to always fight honorably. Now, at first glance, that sounds great, but his idea of being honorable was somewhat different to others, because he always fought to the death. The idea was to hold anything back in a fight is dishonoring the person you are fighting. It sounds like a good thing, but trust me, it turned problematic rather quickly. You should also need to know he was a huge power gamer, an optimizer. He min-maxed his guy and had to be the one that did everything. Have to kill something? He had to get the killing blow. Need a face? He's your man. Stealth mission? Yep, just ignore the plate and awful dexterity. Min-max, remember? Someone will cast Pass Without a Trace on me. That sort of thing. Also, he played a lot of games. He was off sick at the time of play and jumped on every game he could, putting him at a higher level to everyone else. He was easily the strongest character on the server. Now, after all that preamble, let's get to the actual event. We had been tasked in investigating a village that had gone silent. Very quickly, we ascertained there was some sort of mind control going on, as the whole village was outside the church, standing motionless, staring at it. We crept up and discussed what to do, when Mike just walked straight over one of the villagers and started talking to him. We were dumbfounded by this, but let him continue. The villager, however, didn't say anything to Mike. He was mind-controlled, remember, so Mike decided to hit him with a sword. Did I tell you it was a magical poison-inducing greatsword? The DM suggested it be a non-lethal blow, to which he said, no, that would be dishonorable, and outright murdered that villager. If you hadn't guessed by now, he was playing the whole, it's what my character would do trope. Anyway, to speed this up somewhat, we had to get into the crypt of the church, which would have been easy as the villagers ignored us, up to the murder. But now, we had to fight our way through. The whole way we were knocking the villagers out. But Mike simply cut a bloody swathe through the town, murdering as he went. Eventually, we got into the crypt, and to the source of the problem. I can't remember what it actually was, but I do remember the creature's defender. The town's champion in full plate, wielding a magical greatsword. Now, our tactic was to take out the mind controller, but Mike just waited into the night. Anyway, we managed to kill the creature, but not before Mike slaughtered the knight. This is where the real fun starts. As soon as the knight hit the floor, Mike grabbed up the obviously magic sword to claim. He chucked it at me as he knew I had identify, due to bar stuff, and insisted I find out what it was before we went anywhere. Upstairs, the villagers were coming to life, but here I am, ritually casting a spell, as I blew all my slots in the fight, to appease Mike. Anyway, it turned out it was only slightly magical, and disheartened, he handed it over to the other fighter in the group, saying, "You might as well have this item, my sword is more powerful." I have to point out, there had been zero discussion on loot at this point. He just assumed it was his. That was his way, because you guessed it, it's what my character would do. The fighter, however, turned it down, as he also had a magic sword that was better. Mike then chirped up a bit as he realized we could sell it, meaning more gold for him. Then I piped up pointing out that I was a blade lock. Remember, my multi-class sometimes confused people, and I could use a greatsword. Plus, I didn't have any magic items at all. Begrudgingly, Mike handed over the sword, and I was very happy with my first item of the game. We are now at the end of the game, and the DM wanted to wrap up with the thankful villagers giving us some more loot. And then it happened. Mike stepped forward to speak to the mayor. Let's not forget that he had killed about a dozen villagers as well as the knight, but he never apologized for his actions, so this was strange. "The knight we fought, was he your champion?" he asked. "Yes, a good man, but we understand what you had to do," the mayor responded. "Did he have a family?" Mike asks. I'm not sure if the DM had that written down, and I'm sure he had dibbled the next bit, but said he had a son. It produced a teary-eyed child. Mike then looked at the child, whose father he practically murdered. Yes, they were fighting, but he gave no quarter, remember, because of honor. And we waited amazed that his character, for once, seemed to be remorseful for his actions. But no. He then turned towards my character and said, "I think you should give this child his father's sword back." Everyone was stunned. This was a guy that killed the child's father, tried to claim it himself, and was pissed that he gave it to me, but then pulls this from literally nowhere. Now, I would like to point out that I was shocked and incredibly pissed off in what he had done, but maintained character and agreed to give it back to him. However, the DM intervened and said no, it was loot and I could keep it. But Mike continued to argue that was the honorable thing to do, and how my character was dishonest in taking the sword. The DM quickly wrapped the game, but I never truly forgave Mike for that day. We did carry on playing, but his activities got worse and worse as we realized how toxic he actually was. Eventually, he rage quit over a minor affront, but then tried to sneak back in and sabotage. Luckily, he did go and order was restored. I later found out that he joined private group formed by other players on the server and managed to wreck that game as well with his antics before being booted. It was so weird as he sounded like a really nice and genuine person when we started out. So, to me, this was a murder hobo. He was trying to kill anything and everything for honor, and in reality, it was likely for the loot, and the happiness of killing something, because some people really like the idea of killing rather than the role play, but, the knight shouldn't have been able to be killed. That's a personal opinion. Well, it should be able to be killed, but it shouldn't be that easy that it took him less time to kill the knight rather than the main creature. And so I think it should have been stronger. There should have also been actions and consequences for Mike's actions. Inside and outside of the game. The fact that the mayor outright was understanding about Mike killing the knight is confusing, and it doesn't make sense. And then for Mike to be like, "Oh, here, give it to the son." Yes, in game that sounds really honorable, but if I'm being honest, I think that he was just wanting to do that so the OP didn't get it. But anyway, let me know what you think, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!